Welcome, gentlemen, ladies, and non-binary mateys. Today I want to talk about one of my favorite movies, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Like many of you, I absolutely fell in love with this movie back when it came out. It has incredible animation, characters, humor, and there's so much to talk about that plenty of people have done it already. But for this video, I just wanted to talk about the music, specifically about all the music related to death. The most endearing, the cutest, the hottest, the coolest character in the movie. I'm being held back by society. And just as a disclaimer, apparently DreamWorks is one of the strictest companies when it comes to copyright claiming on any videos that use footage or music from their movies, even though most of these videos fall under fair use. So don't be surprised that I won't actually play any of the music by itself, or if I end up having to put a border around the video, I will try to put the title of the music on screen for whatever music I'm talking about, so you can follow along yourself if you'd like. But okay, let's get into it. Before we get to death though, I want to talk about the favorite Fearless Hero scene first. Here's the transcription of the beginning of the song. We'll talk more about the actual notes later, so just keep that in the back of your head for now. With that aside, what a perfect way to open the movie. The music is so fun, and almost everything in the scene is timed to it, from the milk he tosses to the crowd, to the knives around him on the roulette wheel, even the fireworks that wake the giant later. And when he starts sword fighting, the first hits of his blade against the governor's men act as a counter melody to the singing. It goes back and forth like that from the sword clinking to the singing until it joins the main melody just a moment later in this POV shot. It swaps from the actions in the scene conforming to the music like that, to the music conforming to the scene. Like this moment where the music accentuates how Puss ripped up the governor's clothes. And when the giant comes in, the singers transition into a much slower and heavier section that's emphasized by even more things in the scene that are on the beat. Like the giant's thunderous footsteps, and Puss smashing this glass and then slamming the chair down. And the band plays double the tempo when the frames of the animation are halved. And when the giant swings the bell, its impacts are timed with the stronger beats of the music, mostly the first beat of every measure. The music here feels so heroic and grand as he's fighting such a large foe. And there's a part in it with the choir that sounds like it's the actual townspeople singing and cheering him on. Everything about this scene is so well crafted, and I could probably keep going analyzing every little thing, but I think you get my point. It's awesome. But Puss gets and goes to the doctor, where he finds out he's on his last life, to which he acts like he doesn't care and just walks away. And when he gets to the bar, we get one of the coolest scenes in the whole movie, the introduction of Death. With how little Death is actually in the movie, it's amazing how much of a raw impact he leaves on Puss and the audience, and this scene is a big reason as to why. Near the beginning of the scene, there's no music, but we can hear very faint, soft bells slowly getting louder before stopping right as the last candle on the chandelier gets blown out by a rush of wind, the wind appearing as swiftly as Death does just moments later. All of this is a subtle hint as to who this character is before we even see him in the scene. The bells sound like they're in the distance, and them getting louder signifies Death coming closer. There are 8 tolls of the bell and 8 candles in the chandelier, and just like how the wind blows away the last of the 8th candles, Death just took Puss's 8th life a few scenes ago, with a bell of all things. Then, Death appears in the seat right next to him like a rush of wind without Puss even realizing it at first, whistling that creepy tune of his. And as Death starts talking to Puss, we hear the first non-diegetic melody in the scene, a solo harmonica which plays similar notes to his whistled tune, but not quite. Then it's back to the sound of the storm outside, which appeared when Death did, and then the harmonica returns again once Death pulls out the wanted poster. His finger thuds against the poster rhythmically with some percussion adding more oomph to it, and the cellos and basses drone underneath menacingly. And then Puss confidently pulls out his sword with a signature guitar playing, before it's cut short, as quickly as Puss's catchphrase is when Death easily knocks the blade out of his hand. This repeats a couple of times. The guitars play when Puss thinks he has the upper hand before they're cut short by silence. This back and forth of the instruments portrays the battle musically by showing who's struggling in the fight and who's not. Whenever Puss's music is backing him, it's throwing everything it has into it. Guitars, shakers, trumpets, everything. This on its own isn't abnormal, of course. We've been hearing this style for him so far, and we'll continue to hear it throughout the rest of the movie. But when you compare it to the halting, chilling silence used for Death in these few moments, it makes it abundantly clear who has all the cards right now. With him, the first couple of times it's just some low cellos and basses droning underneath that silence. Death doesn't have many instruments behind him so far because he's not doing anything. He's barely fighting back because he knows he doesn't need to. And as such, it makes the music behind Puss in this scene feel desperate rather than heroic. Only once Death actually starts fighting back do we hear more instruments. Some strings that are consecutively hitting quarter notes as his attacks get more intense. The percussive hits that were used earlier earlier when Death was tapping the wanted poster come back now punctuating when he slams Puss into the same table. Death's music is also in 3/4, and 3/4 is the same time signature used for his whistle. This is another contrast between their music because Puss's music for this scene, as well as Fearless Hero, is all in 4/4, while 3/4 is most commonly used as the time signature for a dance, a waltz. Death is playing with Puss. He doesn't see this as a challenge at all and is just toying with him, dancing with him. Then, Death lands a blow on someone who just 10 minutes ago prided himself on never being touched by a blade. Death's scythe makes a single cut on Puss's forehead, and we can start to hear Puss's heartbeat quicken as the strings eerily play Death's whistle motif. And then when Puss has his lives flashing before his eyes, it cuts to each memory on time with the heartbeats. His heartbeat is the audible representation of his fear in this moment, and the fact that his heartbeats guide the pace of the flashbacks shows that right now his fear is taking over all his thoughts. Then Puss runs away after Death ends the scene just how he began, whistling his tune, but now with some brass echoing his whistle as he opens the door. Okay, 2 amazing scenes I could probably talk about for a while longer, but what are the connections I'm trying to draw here? Well, let's bring up the notes for Death's whistle. Like the music that was backing him during the fight, this is also in 3/4. Now let's look again at the melody in Favorite Fearless Hero. Look at the notes here. G up to B, then down to D instead of up, and then A up to C. Death's whistle is a modified version of Favorite Fearless Hero's melody. It's obviously not a perfect one-to-one match, but they're definitely connected by the contour and the notes themselves. This means that in Death's introduction scene, he not only knocks Puss down a peg because he's been so cocky, but he also takes his song and turns his symbol of fearlessness into his fear. Another thing I like in particular is that because this is him using that heroic melody as a way of taunting Puss, his whistle is in a major key, and yet it still sounds so creepy. That juxtaposition is a big part of why. The notes themselves are major and playful sounding if we isolate them like what I've done here, so everything around the notes being so scary is what makes the whistle unsettling by extension. With this first appearance of the whistle, there's a soft but eerie sounding wind underneath it. Then there's lightning that appears in the background, but the thunder is muted, as if everything around this moment, around this whistle, is being completely halted. And this keeps happening anytime Death appears. Nearly all the sound from the scene around Puss is either cut out or muffled or distorted in some way, and then we hear it. Even the fact that it's a whistle adds to the eeriness. It's airy, thin-sounding, and cold. The simplicity of it further adds to how casually Death is treating the situation, as I mentioned earlier. Between that and the fact that he's whistling and not humming, it's almost as if he's saying all he needs to kill Puss is a simple puff of air. I also feel like there could be another reason that adds to this feeling of isolation, although it's a bit of a reach. In this scene, he says, "Everyone says they'll be the one to defeat me, but no one's escaped me yet." With most of what Death says, he is completely confident, but in this moment, for just a second, he kind of looks disappointed that no one's ever defeated him. Like, yeah, it's still a very confident thing to say, the fact that he's never been beaten, but the way he says it makes it feel a little somber. He seems to relish in this job where he's constantly taking people's lives, and he clearly enjoys the actual act of doing so, yet you can't help but wonder how lonely it might make him feel, unable to have a real connection with anyone. That's of course all just speculation on how he feels, so I can't really draw a concrete connection between that and the whistle, but it's still something I wanted to point out. The whistle itself also ties into Puss's lives in a couple of ways. If we look at the notes and only count the ones that aren't repeats, we get 8 notes, just like the 8 lives, 8 candles, etc. And that last note is left unresolved. It's a leading tone just begging to be continued with a G. But it's not resolved yet because that 9th life hasn't been taken yet, and Death isn't even trying to take it right now, as we've mentioned. I even made a little flowchart here for all the connections I found, and there are probably more I haven't noticed. Let me know if you've seen any more. Also, small thing that I noticed while looking at the footage, Puss has been gone through 8 glasses at this bar, which I already noticed and added to this flowchart, but then I realized there's a 9th glass that Death picks up as he enters. Like that, there's so many little details. I love this movie. I love this movie. One other thing that didn't really fit on the flowchart was that there were these ghostly sounds in the music backing the I'm Death scene. They're the notes from the whistle, but broken up, sliding into each other eerily. And the use of the percussion with the low strings here is very similar to when he was tapping the Wanted poster earlier. Very small things, but I thought they were neat and I wanted to mention it. But now let's move on to the final fight with Death. Right before the fight, after Perito gives Puss some words of wisdom, we hear the whistle again. The same as every other time, but now everyone else is hearing it too, and they can see Death. And then Death isolates Puss from everyone else with the pink fire, and we hear the orchestra play the whistle melody. But this time, while it still only has 8 notes, it finally has a resolution on G, because Death isn't messing around anymore, and he's finally come to take Puss's last life. Okay, small thing actually, but it does resolve once earlier during the fight for the map in the middle of the movie. I had completely forgotten this happened, and I was trying to think of what story reason could have led them to resolve it like this in the middle of the movie. One possibility is that this could be considered when Puss is the most afraid, since it's right before his panic attack, but it's also just possible that there's no real story reason for it resolving like this right here, and it's just what they decided sounded good in the moment. As much as I like to reach for connections, sometimes there just aren't any, and this might be one of those times. So yeah, I was trying to make it sound all cool that this was the first time it resolves to a G, but it wasn't. But it still does it right here for a big story reason, so I guess that's all we'll take away from it for now. Okay, but back to it. We then get a recurrence of Puss having flashbacks timed with his heartbeat. But this time, the heartbeats are only in time with the flashbacks for a moment, because as he thinks about his adventure with Kitty and Perito, his quickening heartbeat fades away and his mind slows down. His fear isn't taking over his thoughts anymore. And the theme for team friendship plays because now he's truly appreciating the time he's spent with them and realizing that's all he needs. And then the fight starts, and the music has a much different energy than their first fight. Not only that, but it starts out in 4/4, Puss's time signature. But it's playing a version of Death's instrumental theme, the one that previously played when he was slamming Puss into the bar. The playing field is a lot more even now, and it's almost like Puss is using Death's music to get back at him, much like how Death has been using his with the whistle this whole time. But then the music briefly transitions back into 3/4, with Death's theme coming back in its original style as he tries to remain on top. I should rephrase that. But as Puss is attacked again, he pulls out the gatito blade. And I couldn't really hear it in the movie, but if you listen to the soundtrack on its own, you can hear Kitty's motif appear in the background right as he pulls it out. And I think Team Friendship's motif might play as he holds it up to Death, too. Even though he's separated from them, he's still bringing his friends with him in this final fight. Now the music has completely changed to be Puss's music, through and through. It's very close to being the same theme that was playing when he defeated the giant at the beginning of the movie, the last time he was fully confident when defeating a foe. He's changed, he understands what it means to value his life now, and he has his composure back. And Death sees this in him and gets furious, but finally decides to leave him alone. He whistles the melody once more as he walks away, but this time it's transposed up to A major. And it's not the entire whistle, but it does end on the tonic again, giving the whistle and their rivalry a proper conclusion. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. This is one of my favorite movies, and it was really fun to dissect this music and these scenes, and I hope it was just as fun for you to watch it. Please consider giving the video a like, and if you enjoy this kind of analysis for music and media, then consider subscribing, because that's what I plan to keep on doing. Thanks again for watching!